You are not playing drums correctly. Okay, that's probably an exaggeration, but let's talk about dynamics because they're important and they're gonna make you sound like a more professional drummer. I am a huge believer that drums do not have to be loud. I wanna talk about dynamics. I think that's what a lot of drummers I see are doing wrong. And trust me, I have been there, and there'll probably be a day where I'm still there. I'm not always perfect, but I think dynamics can revolutionize the way that you sound as a drummer. And I don't just mean dynamics as in I play all the drums and cymbals loud or all the drums and cymbals quiet. But I think inner dynamics and a whole bunch of other stuff can really help you. But this is, I think, something that's hugely overlooked by drummers because playing with dynamics takes a lot of technique and a lot of ability. I think more drummers are too loud for a lot of situations just because they lack the technique to play quieter. And then it becomes well, I'm just, I'm going for it. But if you do that and, you have to, when you're in a smaller club, play hot rods or something, hot rods have a different texture and sound than sticks. And I think that dramatically changes the vibe of a set. And it changes the sound of the drums and the sound of the cymbals. And I think that it would just be better if all of us as drummers could take some responsibility and say, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to play quieter because it's important. And not just because it helps me play in different rooms and be more appropriate for smaller rooms, but playing with dynamics and having the ability to play with inner dynamics, which we'll get to, can make your grooves and everything sound so much better. These are 3 things you can do to improve your dynamics and to think about your dynamics more, and I guarantee if you take these into consideration, you put them in the practice room, you start working on it, you will immediately sound like a groovier and a more professional drummer. Even if that's not your goal, even if you don't want to get paid to play. We all want to sound professional, right? We all want to sound as good as we can, and dynamics are a way, without learning anything new, no new licks or chops or fills or grooves or whatever, just using dynamics can help your sound so much. So, the first tip I have is overall dynamics, right? And that's typically as far as we go, and that's why I'm starting there, because most of us, when we think dynamics, we just think, I'm gonna play loud or I'm gonna play soft. So, that is true, and mastering the ability to play loudly and softly is very, very valuable, because if you can play all the same information loud and all the same information soft, that's going to mean that when you play a smaller club and there's a vocalist that, usually when they hire a drummer, they have to sing louder and try harder because the drummer's overpowering everybody else on stage. If you're in a situation where that's what the vocalist is used to, and now you're playing with dynamics and you're playing the room and you're playing as loud as you need to, but no louder, the vocalist, I guarantee, might not realize what's going on, but they will notice, wow, I love that show because I didn't have to shout over the drums or whatever. That's a good thing. You want that, okay? So, overall dynamics is something to think about. Be able to play everything you know how to play, loudly and quietly. So, for instance, the difference between playing loud and playing soft. So in playing with dynamics, overall dynamics doesn't just help you play the room better, but it can also help you in a studio scenario where playing the verse, you play that quieter than the chorus. The chorus is louder than the verse. Those kind of subtle overall dynamic changes can really make a producer say, wow, that was amazing. I didn't have to tell Tim I don't have to. If you can learn these dynamics, what it does for producers and front of house engineers is they start to not have to mix you because you're already mixing yourself. You're making their job easier, which is something that everyone likes. Everyone likes it when their job is made easier, and whatever's making their job easier, they want to be around that thing more. So if it's you that's making their job easier, that's a good thing. And mixing yourself brings me to my second point, which is not overall dynamics, but inner dynamics. And what I mean by that is inner limb dynamics. So between all 4 limbs that are going, your left foot on the hi-hat or your right foot on the kick drum, and then your 2 hands playing cymbals and drums, being able to play and mix yourself. Cymbals are metal and they're very loud, and you don't have to strike a cymbal that loud for it to be the same dynamic volume as a snare drum. Snare drum is plastic stretched over a drum, and you have to hit it a lot harder to be as loud as a cymbal. If I'm playing this ride cymbal and this snare drum with the same amount of force, this cymbal is going to be louder than the snare drum. But if I know that going into it, I can say, okay, I'm going to play my cymbals quieter than I play my drums. And now it's not like, the cymbals are so loud, everything's balanced. And the more balanced things can be, the better off you are. So I'll play an example where we'll take the hi-hat. The hi-hats, especially when someone's washing the hi-hats, usually they're just so overbearing and so loud. If you can know going into it, hi-hats are metal, they're going to be a lot louder than drums, and you back down your volume yourself. That one limb, you just take it and turn it down, and you play your hi-hat quieter, you're instantly going to sound more professional, more solid, more mixed, better balanced, and that's going to be a good thing no matter what. So I'll play a couple bars where the hi-hats are too loud, and then only change the volume of the hi-hats, and you'll immediately hear how much better it sounds when I'm not playing my hi-hats too loud. The reason inner dynamics are hard is because it takes a lot of coordination to play the hi-hat softer than I'm playing the snare drum. But it's coordination worth working on. And the best way to work with this is set up one microphone. I'm only recording this with one microphone. 2 microphones because one's recording my voice. But this one microphone is capturing everything. So, and I talked about it a couple weeks ago, using one microphone, you really get a mix of, okay, this one microphone is hearing this instrument, it's hearing kick drum not as loud as the snare drum, and it's hearing the hi-hat louder than both of those. So you start to have to mix yourself, and you say, okay, I'm going to play my hi-hat quieter, snare drum's going to stay the same, and then kick drum I'm going to play louder. Doing exercises like that are greatly going to make you sound so much better immediately. Third and last thing we're going to talk about, so we've talked about overall dynamics, playing everything louder or softer depending on the room and the section of the song and all of that. And then we talked about inner limb dynamics, which means I'm playing the ride cymbal quieter because it's louder than the snare drum, and I'm playing the snare drum louder, and the kick drum I'm playing the loudest because it's the softest of all. Inner limb dynamics. Now we're going to talk about inner instrument dynamics. And I'm going to talk a lot about the snare drum because this is one of my pet peeves. I had a professor in college who he wouldn't let anyone play rim shots in a lesson because rim shots are too loud. And I always thought that was absurd because instead of banning students from playing rim shots because they're too loud, because rim shots naturally, a rim shot is when you play the drum, that you hit the drum head and the rim of the drum at the same time. That's a rim shot, which sounds way different than this. Rim shots have more attack, and when I'm playing pop or country or any of that stuff, pretty much every 2 and 4 beat is a rim shot because it cuts through, it's got more attack, more aggression, and that's what you want. However, rim shots don't have to be loud. Playing big rim shots is good, but you can also play rim shots really quietly. And this professor of mine in college who outlawed rim shots for all students, I thought was doing a disservice to the students. Don't ban it, teach the student how to play a quiet rim shot, because I can play rim shots like this. Play rim shots like that, but I can also play rim shots like this. play rim shots all over the drum. You can play it at the edge of the drum, you can play it in the center of the drum, but quiet. A rim shot is literally a different sound you're extracting from the drum than playing a regular hit. Inner dynamics, playing rim shots louder, when I'm playing a groove like snare drum, I'm playing all these notes on the snare drum, but some of those rim shots are out at the edge, some of them are loud, some of them are quiet, Every instrument has a huge dynamic range. You can play the ride cymbal, you can crash it, you can just play the tip of the stick, you can play the bell. There's so much dynamic control that you can get over each drum, and that's infinitely and instantly going to make your grooves sound better if you're playing with that kind of intention on each instrument. So those are the three things I wanted to talk about with dynamics. Overall dynamics, which is playing certain sections of songs softer or louder, or in a room changing your whole volume overall from loud and big arenas to very quiet and smaller clubs. Overall dynamics is the first. The second is inner limb dynamics, playing certain instruments on the drum set louder than others because cymbals are naturally louder than drums, and making those adjustments so that you're kind of self-mixing yourself. And then third would be inner instrument dynamics, which means we talked a lot about the snare drum, we talked about playing rim shots at different volumes, gives you different textures, gives your whole groove just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So dynamics are important. They're going to make you sound better instantly without learning anything new. If you can start to learn how to utilize dynamics in your favor, whether you're trying to get hired or whether you're just trying to sound good for your local band or whatever, it's going to be a good thing. People will start liking your playing more, and they won't know why. And it's not because you're playing fancy or chops or whatever. You're playing dynamically, which means you're sounding more professional, more solid, more cohesive, and people like that. So give it a try and let me know what you think. Dynamics, is this something you think about, or do you just kind of go for it, or whatever? Put it in the comments. I'll see you there, and I'll also see you in the next lesson.